Good morning, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to day number 5 of our Value First Framework series. I'm Chris Carolyn, and I'm here with the HubSpot mad scientist, Erin Wiggers. How you doing today, Erin?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a tough couple of acts to follow, days 1 through 4. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, and we've got a good one to talk about today. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, and it's my favorite one, if I'm being honest. Apologies to all the other pillars and all the other experts, oh, this is my favorite session because we're talking about what might be the most insidious trap of all 10, because it just creates so much dependency at the end of the day. And the more I looked into it, like didn't happen by accident, right?
Right. It's almost
So
like a bait and switch, to be honest.
yeah. And here's like, so imagine this: we're looking at a company's budget and we notice something troubling. See that managed services line or other services or professional services started as a small investment, has quietly grown into one of the largest expenses. Uh, and usually it's coming from a place of trying to reduce complexity, like internally, but somehow it's created more of it.
Right.
Um, and we're in a system designed for it, right?
For sure. For sure. And yeah, it's almost it's kind of a double-edged sword because you as a partner, as somebody who's delivering those services, you want to be able to have and speak to that kind of complexity. Um, but and so yeah, you kind of get them in the door by saying, yeah, we can do all these complex things. And then they kind of don't realize that they're going to need you to maintain those complexities going forward. So the thing that was kind of your big selling point now becomes your technical debt somehow. And so, yeah, and then it becomes this like positive feedback cycle where complexity begets more complexity, begets more complexity. So you end up, doing the classic, um, you know, uh, trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result and not getting it because that's the definition of insanity.
Yes. And why else would you be making this decision unless you're in a trap of some sort? And this is the managed services trap that we're talking about. And we're going to show you today how to recognize this trap, which most of you probably already do, but hopefully we can show you where the dependencies are happening and how you can break free. Um, because this is a tough one to swallow when you're inside of an organization. And especially as I've seen HubSpot, I've been in the HubSpot ecosystem in manufacturing environments where if there is an IT setup, it's very traditional. You have ERPs, you have all these things that are supposed to just take forever. We just accept it.
Right.
And right, so you've got it's so foreign to the HubSpot ecosystem because like I mean, hell, we just got a sandbox that can push to production like this week,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
and it's going to be interesting this evolution and what we talk about when the difference between a Salesforce admin and a HubSpot admin comes back to this just mindset of being okay with like simple updates,
Mhm.
taking weeks, right? Calling them cycles. Oh, it's got to fit in, right? Oh, it's too complex for the people out here. So we only have one or two people that know how to do that. So we got to just get it
Right.
on their schedule, or we
Right.
can pay more, right, to expand the scope. Um, when we specifically hired people to give us help. And one of my favorite things about HubSpot is that you can actually build it in a way uh, to support the enablement we're going to be talking about today. You
Mhm.
can also build it in a way that doesn't,
For
right?
sure. For sure.
So, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's one of the things that really drew me into this ecosystem, 10 years ago when I first started um, as a developer, because I was building websites and realized like, oh, I can put all these options in the module and like they don't need me anymore. Like that's because my kind of biggest fear as a developer was always like I'm going to become the bottleneck, and the more projects I build, the more people will be dependent on me to, make fixes or, inevitably change the things that, you kind of see coming with clients where you're like, yeah, you're gonna want to change that eventually. And so, yeah, one of the reasons that I really fell in love with the platform was because, there is a way to do it and empower people to use it, and to feel confident in it, to be able to build websites and, even workflows, small integrations. Like HubSpot makes it very accessible if it's done correctly. And the opposite, like you said, is true, where there's also the ability to make it so complex and so unwieldy that you're kind of locking someone into, well, it's too much to really democratize the knowledge, right? Like it's too much to give to the whole team. So we're going to silo that knowledge here, so that a couple of people own the complexity. So you're trying to like shield your team from the complexity, but also, like that just kind of creates more dependency. Um, so it's hard to I think it's hard to realize that you're in the trap when it's happening, because it starts out kind of like, oh, this is complex, like I'm glad I have them, to, oh, this is complex, why did I hire them? And being able to recognize that slippery slope, figuring out along the way, like, oh, they're not really prioritizing my education about what's being built. They're not really prioritizing, training more than just one person. Um, and so that once you can recognize it, it's kind of like all of these sessions we've had. Like once you can recognize it, you can try to break out of that cycle, and have more value in your life, in your
Yeah.
systems.
Yeah. And that's again the heart of value first is like just creating a path because like it's very easy to look around you and say, I guess everybody else is using this kind of
Right,
technical services firm or managed service contract. Oh, like, oh, I gotta buy this thing. Like, oh,
right,
everybody else says you gotta have a managed services contract, with it,
right,
right?
right.
So it started from a place of like understanding I need this level of implementation. We
Mhm.
don't have any internal expertise. Of course, I need to lean on an external vendor,
Right.
right? But then you start, leaning on more than one vendor just to make the same system work. And the
Right.
work, like where a lot of people, get it wrong is like thinking you can delegate all of it to the external
Mhm.
partner without anybody internally owning this,
Right.
right? And so there's just all this hidden cost in here,
Sure.
right? And oh, like the whole mantra of like there's two sides to the story, right? There's a whole industry like built out to support this because SaaS is so complex,
Right.
sometimes unnecessarily so because you have all these individual silos competing for the same pie, building their own things their own way. Thank
Salesforce. Salesforce.
thank the Lord for MCP and AI. This is why
Right.
like if you can, so that's why we're talking to like, on the user side, the customer side, like if you're in managed services contracts or you feel like you're dependent on any set of things and you haven't realized what AI can do, the whole goal here is to help you like look over here for a second and understand you don't need to know how to do everything. You just
Right.
need to be able to tell AI what you want. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. So,
But
um,
it's the same for the stuff, like all the stuff that I build. It's like, you don't have to know the code. You don't have to know how the integration actually works, but you need to have like some functional knowledge of like, here's where I can check the error logs. Here's where I can monitor what's happening. Here's where I can see that there were successes. And yeah, like you need that functional knowledge. Like it can be intimidating for sure to think, this is out of my depth. This is out of my wheelhouse. This is not what I do on a day to day. And like, I totally get that. And so one of the things that I try to do in my role is just kind of document everything in a way that makes it accessible to people so that if they have a question, if they have, something they want to know, remind themselves like, okay, how do I do this again? Um, I don't want them to have to track me down, mostly because I'm terrible at responding to emails, but also because, I don't want to be that bottleneck. And I want to empower people to use what they paid for and use what we built for them. Because yeah, otherwise, it's technical debt is all it is.
Yeah. And when you add in like basically almost relationship debt, I don't even know if that's a thing, but it might be now, like
Right. I
the
like it.
dependency model, right? Like, because the difference, because you got to play challenger sometimes to help people understand that they can do things, right? And last week I had a client, we're working on building on the HubSpot, and we've already had a bunch of training sessions. So
Mhm,
she's seen like how to make properties, for an example.
mhm,
And but we have you know uh, a relationship, and she says in the email, she's like, hey, I need, these are the changes I need to properties, and I need this kind of property, and we got to add this value.
mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, so you can go ahead and do that,
Right,
yourself. Not in this, I wasn't this abrasive, I
right,
promise.
right.
But
What you
she
wanna say
comes
is
back
like,
within an
"Time
hour.
for you to write that email, you could have done this."
Right. Like, and she comes back in an hour having it done. And
Right.
like, she's the one with the knowledge of what needs just the efficiency of being able to do that. And
Mhm,
her knowing that she can, like, it confirms that she can own the system, right?
mhm,
All of this coordination overhead just
mhm.
disappears, right? And man, learned helplessness.
Oh
Like,
gosh,
if
one of my
that
favorite
happens in
concepts from
any
psychology.
domain of the business, watch it spread like to the rest of that person's job. And you just, it's a fast track to disempowering people, right?
100%.
And when they're disempowered, they don't raise their hand with new ideas, they don't innovate, like their knowledge goes away. They turn into, data entry clerks, because that's the position, you put them in. That's why this is such an insidious
Right.
trap, right?
Because learned helplessness really it turns off part of your brain. Like it turns off the part of your brain that tries to problem solve, and it just kind of shuts down immediately and is like, I can't do this because it hasn't worked in the past. I'm not an expert. I don't know all the ins and outs. And so yeah, it's you're setting people up to fail because they're not. You're setting people up to not even try, honestly. And it has a lot to do with how we position ourselves as experts, which is why I think, this value first concept is so impactful. It's because it's not just, you know, something that you believe. It's how you interact with clients. It's how you approach problem solving in a more collaborative way where you're not saying, I'm the expert and I know how to do all these things. Watch me work my magic. You're making it, here are the buttons that I push, and it's not anybody can push these buttons. You just have to kind of know which ones in the right order and all of that kind of good stuff. So um, yeah, it's a mindset shift for everyone involved, for the people in the trap, for the people who are doing the trapping. Because I think a lot of people kind of go into it with good intentions. I've been on projects where it started out as one thing, and then the more requirements kind of come to light, the complexity builds almost in like a snowball kind of effect where um, that wasn't the original intention, and things kind of got away from you. And it takes kind of both sides to recognize that and figure out a path forward. Because yeah, there's once it snowballs, you've got to catch it, or you're going to be in a up to your eyeballs in technical debt for sure.
Yeah. And it's pretty predictable at this point. Like,
100%.
because most organizations, this is where we know like 70% of digital transformation efforts fail, right?
Right.
So most organizations struggle with the complexity. They hire services to manage it.
Hmm.
The services create new dependencies, which require more services. And
Right.
each layer adds cost without proportional value,
Right.
right? So like a 2-day process becomes 3-week coordination effort,
Right.
right? Because nobody can see the whole picture. Everything is siloed.
Hmm.
And recently, as I've become familiar with what it really takes to integrate ERPs with HubSpot, and you have an iPass in the middle,
Hmm.
and just watching nobody talking to each other and just handling their business, but understanding they have to do that because there's so much work to align all the pieces and the way that different people do things. They've just built their own workarounds
Right.
and they immediately go to that.
Hmm.
And I was on a call, and literally, this is like trying to be empathetic to the people that are just in this system that
Hmm.
has been created. I just said, like, have we talked to NetSuite or HubSpot about this being a problem native, right? Instead of just creating more properties to create the workarounds and the workflows inside the iPass.
Right.
And they literally like, no, that makes sense. Like we should do that. Of course it does. Like, why aren't
For
we doing
sure.
that already? Like,
Right.
and it's
Right.
because they're so used to, like, they've probably tried that before. And
Right.
like, it's a hassle. I can't get a hold of anybody, right?
Right.
It's systems overly complex. We know how to do it. We have certain certainty of outcomes over here,
Hmm.
and everybody's building their own thing.
Right.
Um, so we've helped. We've got a framework here,
Yeah.
a light diagnostic, right? It's called the NEED framework, um, and stands for natural, enhanced, elevated, and distributed,
Hmm.
right? And our first one, so 4 simple questions here that will help you reveal, whether you're trapped or transformed. In service delivery on either side, right? Whether you're receiving the service, or you're giving it. Um, so for the end, we've got natural collaboration versus artificial control,
Hmm.
right? So does your service model enable natural collaboration or require artificial control? An example, artificial control, right? So that last week example. If my business model is built on hourly rates, just doing stuff for people, getting stuff done,
Hmm.
instead of suggesting that she can do the properties herself, I have somebody on my team do it and I charge for that hour
Right.
because that's how my business is built
Right.
versus building it towards enabling her to do the thing that she needs to do. And now, as a business, like I have that extra hour available to talk about strategic things, to build new stuff, better stuff, right?
Right. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss is making this change, going through this kind of mindset shift does not mean you're less involved. It means you're more involved in higher value execution. Because yeah, like building properties that you can do through the UI is not a good use of your time. Talking about what properties need to be created, how they should be utilized in workflows, like what they should trigger and how they should be in the reports. That's the value. You're kind of freeing yourself up. It kind of goes back to even the AI thing. It's like you're freeing yourself up to do the more impactful things, which is going to lead to people being more satisfied with your services. Because I think a lot of people would get that email and say, "Well, the client asked me to do it. I have to do it. I can't push back on that because it's a simple request." And it's like, it's not necessarily pushing back to say, no, I won't do this for you. It's that natural collaboration of, oh, you can definitely do that. Let me show you, or refer to this that we've talked about before, and let me know if you have any other questions. Like, obviously, if they get stuck on something, you can definitely charge them the hour and go help. Um, but if it's something that can be offloaded to the client in that collaborative way, it feels good to them to be able to accomplish that. It feels good to you to be able to move on to more important things. So yeah, I think the natural collaboration is one of my favorite parts of the job, honestly. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think this one's huge.
Especially with HubSpot and with AI, like the unnatural stuff, the artificial stuff, it's just not going to work, very much longer. And this leads to the second E, which is enhanced human capability, versus dependency maintenance. Are your people becoming more capable or more dependent over time? And
Mm,
you mentioned it, they'll be more satisfied with the relationship, but they'll be more satisfied with their job too.
for
Like if
sure.
they can do stuff, if they can handle their business on a daily without having to reach out to somebody else that they know they might have to pay for or will take extra time, extra effort. I need help right now.
Right.
Right. So if I don't have the knowledge I need, right, and the confidence I need, a lot of these conversations, I just get to be the coach, which I'm happy to do. And people are starting to understand the value of,
Mhm.
like, oh, yeah, that thing just came out last week. Here's a link to it.
Right.
Right. Or, yes, HubSpot can do that.
Right.
Right. Like if you're not keeping up with HubSpot and you're in these conversations with other vendors, for an example, there's no way they're keeping up. So everybody's is like an unsure. So we just keep doing things the whole way and nobody has any confidence,
Right.
right?
Right.
Every little step you can take where there's capability related to a system like HubSpot, the
Mhm.
confidence grows. And now the conversations get better. Now they can help coach the team inside, right? Instead of again continuing this external reliance path.
Right. Because that confidence is really infectious in a team. Once one person really starts to get it, and you're kind of nurturing that natural collaboration, everybody kind of starts to get in on it, and it's like, oh, well, if they can do it, I can definitely do it, and if they're confident about it, I can be confident about it. So yeah, you just kind of have to chip away at that idea that um, I can't do this, or I need someone else to do this. Um, which, I think there are a lot of CRMs in Salesforce that you probably do need somebody else. I would probably need somebody else, but HubSpot's just not like that. And as a developer who's been building kind of on the edge of what HubSpot's capable of, there are updates that come out just about every week that kind of negate a solution that I have built before. And that makes me happy. Like I'm not upset about that at all. I mean, if I had like built a product around it, I'd be a little more perturbed, but you kind of just have to accept that like the platform is also evolving, and you can either embrace that, and use it to your advantage to make things simpler, to kind of cut back on that complexity there, or you can be a stick in the mud and say, well, I'm going to build it how I always built it, and that is just going to lead to more complexity.
Yeah. And rarely does that more complexity equal more value. Um,
100%.
and that's our second E of the framework here is the elevated value, right? That you get to create now versus optimization, right? So, big theme and value first is we need to move out of the optimization mindset and into the transformation, mindset. So, are you creating breakthrough value or just optimizing existing constraints?
Hmm.
And the worst case of this, and this is where like just think deeply about the relationship you have. Because there's vendors and partners like help to separate it. Vendors, the concept of order taking. Just tell me what you want and we'll do it.
Mhm.
The worst case of this is when we invest in a system like HubSpot. The thing I've seen it the worst is like any CPQ situation,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
Where we take our existing paper-based process
mhm.
and we tried to rebuild it like in the digital system, right? Without changing the process,
Right.
right? You think you're optimizing existing constraints.
Mhm,
And sure, that could be a great first step just to create visibility, but it's
mhm.
literally you're building unnecessary complexity in a system that's not designed for paper processes.
Right.
When the output, like the whole output, which is often asked for in that case, is like, I need a Word doc or I need some kind of spreadsheet output that then I can edit. And it's like, oh, you just broke the whole reason that we brought it into the digital system now.
Right.
So, and that's like optimization versus transformation.
For
Um, from that perspective, right?
sure.
Hopefully that gives a good framing for this space. Like once you start to do these things, or what you're missing out on, the opportunity cost of continuing to do things the same way, of not moving away from a managed services, dependency,
Mhm.
is what else? What other value can we be creating?
Right. Right. Yeah, I think this one is super important because like the idea of optimization. I also kind of think of it as like putting band-aids on like gaping wounds sometimes, where um, you know, you've built something and maybe something comes up and you realize, you need to make some kind of significant shift. And if you can't work back to that original pain, you can't think outside of your current systems to think what you're actually trying to solve for, um, then you're not going to get that elevated value creation. Like if you're just trying to think within your current systems and how to optimize them and how to make step one a little easier, but that kind of affects how step three is going to work downstream, then it's not transformative. It's just slightly better than what you had before, and that's not the value that we're promising people. And when you don't deliver on that, I think you do HubSpot itself a disservice because um, the platform is meant to be transformative.
Yeah. Um, and if you need help understanding what value could be created that's not currently being created today, talk to your frontline team, talk to your customer facing team, even the data entry folks, the ones who are probably closest to the customers.
Absolutely.
On the customer service side of things, on the success side of things, they've got ideas for days
Right.
about things you can and should be doing to support customer experience
Right.
that they're never getting to because they've got to put together order confirmations and
Right.
put data in several different systems just to get it to the customer. Um, and of course, that leads us to our last, the D in need, right? Distributed empowerment versus centralized dependencies.
Mm, mhm.
Uh, do successful approaches spread naturally or stay centralized, with providers or with webmasters or systems admin person? The few key people that they're the only ones that can do the thing, because if anybody else is in, we've got all this risk and we can't trust anybody. That's why your customer facing team has not been speaking up, because they
Right.
know they're not empowered to do anything about it and they've got to go through 10 layers of organization.
Right.
Wow, they're just not having it. So distributed empowerment is about empowering people on the front lines where the insights are so that they can take action,
For sure.
right? And avoid all of so much scope creep and time loss and
Mhm.
cost is related to like, all right, I see an idea. Let me put it in the system. Let me email this person. And then we got to set up a meeting about it. And then we got to come up with the brief. And then we got to send it up to the top layer to get it approved. And it probably changed on the way there. So I don't even know if I have what I need
Right.
to like execute my original idea.
For
They
sure.
just check out. They're opting out of that situation.
Right. One of the worst examples of this that I come across far too often is, companies that are trying to move off of an old system, and there's like one dude and he is an absolute dinosaur. Apologies to all the dinosaurs out there. God bless you. But he's been maintaining the system for the last 10 years or however long, and he is putting his feet in the ground and saying, HubSpot can't do this and this and this, because he has become dependent and on that kind of on the trap, on like his job is dependent on having this system where he is the silo, he is the source of truth of like how it works, what to do with it, who's in charge of different parts, and like that's one of the biggest barriers to change management that I encounter, is people who have been kind of entrenched in this trap, that are just kind of dragging everything kind of down to that level. And it's unfortunate for sure, and it's a weird position to be in as the other team who's coming in and saying, well, actually HubSpot can do that, and your whole team could probably do that. And yeah, you don't want to have one person in charge of that level of not even necessarily complexity, but just that level of importance in your organization. Like it's too important to everything to rest it on one set of shoulders. So being able to empower the entire team to where we're all kind of carrying the weight, and even goes back to the natural collaboration. That's my favorite thing, like I said. So
Yeah.
once you kind of start instilling that confidence and distributing the knowledge, distributing the empowerment, all those walls kind of start to come down.
Yeah. And my first experience of that, as I moved outside of like the 10-person company, where it's just everybody's like all hands on deck all the time and just working together. And there's very rarely key person risk in any position.
For sure.
Moving to a bigger company where there was a technical expert that was in charge of both Salesforce and the website of a global company. Um,
Mhm.
so bottleneck, yeah, comes to mind. And from a positive intent perspective, which I love this guy to death, he's been asked to do that. He's been asked to maintain the trap. He's got a trusted role in the company. People go to him for a lot of things,
Absolutely.
outside of those two things. So he's doing what he feels is best for the company, like because
Right.
it's what he's always done, and it manages risk in a way that a lot of other new things, can't right off the bat.
Right.
But obviously, it creates all this disempowerment when, as the business scales or grows, and everybody comes in with these new ideas, they all have to go through this one place, and that person only has so much time, and they can't delegate anything because nobody else knows how to run the system,
Right.
right? From a negative intent perspective, there are people that profit off of that situation, and that's what I'm calling managed services industry.
Right.
Right? Where a lot of people got into it for the right reasons, but there's a lot of people out there, like you think about SEO guru places and all these
Mhm.
people that will manage your Google ads for you.
Right.
It's like they understand what kind of dependencies they can create,
Right.
and sure as hell they built a business that profits off of those.
Right.
It's so great to see Google moving away like they know they have to do, from the Google ads, like just powerhouse of revenue,
Right.
which has been at the center of so many of these things. But that's probably a different conversation. So,
Sure.
what? makes this trap, particularly persistent is how organizations typically respond, when they feel
Mhm,
it. Instead of pulling back and questioning the whole paradigm, again, we try to optimize it. More rigorous vendor management that
mhm,
adds new layers of oversight. Everybody's asked for ROI every day about everything,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Service consolidation that trades multiple smaller dependencies for one larger one,
mhm.
and rebidding focused on reducing costs rather than reimagining the fundamental relationship. I mean, this just came to mind, but man, I think I need to use this one. Like SaaS, we might as well call it settling as a service, like sometimes,
For
right?
sure.
Because that's what we're doing. If we're focusing on costs, so much of it is like, okay, I guess we can't have that thing, but we need support over
Right,
here. So we'll keep it minimum viable product,
right.
even though we have all these ideas of
Mhm,
what could be. We just
right,
can't afford it. It's too hard. Some people, like, you can't even bring up the topic of
right,
ERP, even though everybody hates it. The idea of possibly replacing it or making it better is like, no, I don't want it. Literally, people say, I don't want to ever have to think about that for the rest of my life. That's how much
right,
they don't like it. And it's like,
right.
is that the position we're putting people in?
You're literally taking value off the table. Like, you're saying you're setting yourself up to leave money on the table, and that's, it's a fool's errand to think that you can just avoid something like that, um that taking it off the table is ultimately a better solution, um, than just going into it with a different mindset. Um, and yeah, it's kind of crazy to like, and there's no they do not sense the irony in that at all of like of um trying to avoid complexity by adding more complexity. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing?
Well, so much of it, and I've heard this out loud. Like the leaders, whoever the key decision makers, they don't know. They
Mm,
don't know what could be.
mhm,
So they have to trust the partner or vendor that they're working with, right?
right,
Because so much of this is related to critical business process, right?
right,
Especially when you get on the revenue side of the house. Like when I can't send invoices out for a day, like that's a business problem, right? And we built dependencies. Uh, so you don't have to. It doesn't have to be that way.
right.
And the way we're going to talk about is what I'm referring to as value first delivery.
Mhm,
And I can say honestly, it definitely was managed services trap first. And then as I'm thinking about what the better way is, which one does that relate to, right? And it's delivery, right?
mhm,
Like I wouldn't be in a position to challenge my client to create the properties herself if I didn't start with that upfront. Like when I
right,
give a scope, it's littered with training and coaching and enablement and
mhm,
everything is in there. So there's no guessing about whether you're going to have to pick up some slack in places where you might not be used to, depending on the relationship. There's no like, oh, just leave everything to me, right?
right,
The delivery is the platform, the adoption, like the whole everything. I don't want to have to touch that platform. Like
right,
if I'm doing my job right, like you are in a position inside the company to manage it because you purchased a system like HubSpot that will allow you to do that,
right.
right?
For
So it's about transformation over transaction, natural flow over artificial process, capability over dependency. And
I love that one. Because yeah, the opposite of dependency is capability. Like, the opposite of depending on someone to do it for you is having the ability to do it for yourself. And people need to accept that from this kind of value first mindset of like, I'm not putting more work on you. I'm empowering you so that you can do the work, so that you feel confident about the work, and you don't necessarily need to add in a bunch of extra steps. Like, sending an email to ask questions or, things like that, where you're confident to just go in and do it. And then, you have the capability to maintain those systems that you paid good money for.
Yeah. And like when it comes to ROI and all those requests, right? Like it's hard to measure that stuff, that capability. So we look for like, okay, what functionality has been created? How many emails are we able to send out now? Like how much time is saved? Like,
Right.
you know, one of the biggest misunderstandings is that salespeople care about time saved, right? Like they care about closing deals
Right.
and using processes that they know will close the deals. And
Right.
they will go through an immense amount of what looks like pain on the outside, and they'll complain about it the whole way. Let's be
Mhm.
honest.
We love you salespeople, but come on.
But and this is like, especially when you're in HubSpot land, like trying to find the thing that they care about isn't always easy
Right.
because like the ability to create a meeting, right? Using a meeting link saves like 10 to 15 minutes, like guaranteed, right?
Mhm.
But there's a cost associated with adopting it, understanding how to use it.
Mhm.
If it happens in a misunderstood or unexpected way once, like I'm out as a salesperson. If it's making a duplicate contact, like all of these things start to
Mhm.
come into play, right? Um, so like imagine this, um, like from a value first perspective, like envision, because it is, we're asking to kind of jump out on a limb in terms of like this is a shift to like the KPIs got to change, the mindset, that's a bunch of change management. And the goal is like when I say transformation over transaction, natural flow over artificial process, capability over dependency, obviously, like why wouldn't you want that as a
Right.
leader? I know all of you do, but for some reason, we're not doing it, right? It's common sense things. How can we get in front of doing common sense things,
Mhm.
right? And break free, right? So imagine you could say these things by the end of this year. And these are the value first delivery principles. We got 7 of them. Now, number one, we will prioritize outcome transformation over requirement fulfillment. We
Mhm.
believe that the true purpose of service delivery is enabling meaningful change, not just completing tasks. Number two, we will enable natural value flow rather than controlling it. We
Mhm.
believe that value wants to move freely between willing participants without artificial barriers. Those people on the front lines with all those good ideas and the customers, right? Those are
Right.
the willing participants.
Mhm.
Number three, we will adapt continuously to emerging needs. We believe that effective service delivery evolves through ongoing learning and adaptation
Mhm.
rather than rigid plan execution.
Right.
Oh man, watch any HubSpot project scope get executed right now, and you'll know exactly why that's important.
For
Um,
sure.
Number four, we will leverage distinctive strengths rather than standardizing approaches. We
Mm.
believe that the most powerful solutions come from embracing what makes each organization uniquely capable.
Right.
Number five, we will integrate learning throughout implementation, not at the end,
Not at the end.
not at the beginning, like all of the ways, right? We believe that knowledge sharing and capability building should be continuous
Right.
rather
Not just
than separate
afterthought. Right.
activities, right? Don't wait for things to break. Like,
100%.
uh, number six, we will build capability rather than dependency. We believe that true partnership means helping customers become more capable and independent. Oh man, I got to read the second sentence here. Like, we commit to increasing customer self sufficiency rather than engineering ongoing reliance on
Mm.
our services.
Mhm.
And number seven, we will create collaborative growth rather than manage transactions. We believe that the most Valuable service relationships evolve continuously through mutual development. Um, and really, if I could just put those in a nutshell, and in my best moments, I'm able to explain HubSpot in the simplest way, like the tagline, "Grow better,"
Mhm.
right? Like if you could just believe that a company, like everything those words could possibly mean, like embodies HubSpot, like mindset, grow better. That's what this is about,
Mhm.
right?
For sure.
So which one of those I probably know, but for you, which one of those resonates the most?
Yeah, I think the one about engineering a system that is meant is is meant to empower and be collaborative rather than kind of building yourself some job security. Um, that's the one that kind of speaks to me the most because, like I said, that has been kind of the driving force of my career in HubSpot. Is you know, there's a way to build this so that you kind of like release it into the world and it's its own thing and it can be somebody can take it and run with it. That's kind of what I always say. Like I don't want you to just be able to use it, like I want you to be able to build on it yourself. And I try to put in mechanisms for people to be able to do that. So but I have definitely seen implementations and fixed implementations and rebuilt entire implementations because they had gotten into that trap and kind of realized it too late. And so you end up re-engineering something that was over-engineered to begin with. Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, and it's a mess. It's a complete mess. And so that's the one that really speaks to me. Is it has to be it has to be top down in your organization, all the way to the people that are hands on the keyboard building the system. um, you know that that drive to really be customer first and make it so that your work is accessible to people who are not necessarily as technical as you or as good at HubSpot as you. Um, Kind of breaking down that wall is critical to the success of the overall project.
Yeah. And so we talked about the trap. We talked about where you could and probably should want to go, want to be. But if you're listening and you recognize these patterns, it's probably the best place to start. Conduct a dependency assessment. This
Mm,
can be internal and external, really. Like map where critical knowledge exists primarily outside of your organization. Um, but identify decision points that require external approval,
mhm.
right? And this is where AI, like if you, it's going to be forced on you or you're going to open up to it
Right.
because the, the, the way we are moving, like there are just situations that we've allowed ourselves to get into, like the amount of key person risk that exists in most organizations that
Mm,
require just an immense amount of tribal knowledge to try and replace that person.
mhm.
AI is gonna it's gonna cover that gap in some way or another.
Right.
Um, and so getting ahead of it and understanding, where those dependencies are, you gotta start there.
Right. Right. And it's easy to do. Sit down and think about the processes in your business and think, okay, what am I not comfortable doing? What would I not trust an intern to go do? Like what would I, put towards the end of a new employee's onboarding because I don't want to scare the crap out of them. Like um figuring out those friction points should feel natural because you don't if you have this value first mindset shift, you don't want to be in a position where you have to go digging for the answer or ask someone else, um, or go to the person who owns that. Um, And so, yeah, that dependency audit should be, definitely step 1, and it should be easy.
Yep. Um, if you need help, like
Holler at
we're
us.
here. It starts with a map. Like happy to do it. But I'll like start conversations with your key partners too,
Mhm,
right? And you'll tell very quickly like which ones are on the right side of this. I'll say, but talk to them about moving from service to capability building. Like the
mhm,
best partners, we're seeing a lot honestly in the HubSpot ecosystem right now. It's good to see.
mhm,
They will see opportunity in helping you transform rather than maintaining your dependency. And
right,
many partners actually have entire business units dedicated to training and enablement.
mhm,
You just have to ask for it,
right,
right? Like so much of this is pay attention to the contracts and the relationships,
mhm,
and that maybe that rate sheet that you didn't pay attention to that has training and enablement and coaching and all the things,
mhm,
right? Oh, and think about those high leverage, knowledge areas
mhm,
that create a level of disproportionate dependency,
mhm,
right? When we start talking about ERP integrations, for example,
mhm,
even like highly, highly dynamic website environments where it's business critical, and if it goes down, it's the end of the world. And like create some learning paths for the team rather
mhm,
than expecting immediate full capability, right?
right,
Those paths are going to be like, a combination of
mhm,
tools and training and people resourcing and mindset,
right,
right? We can own these things. We've got the technology, right?
mhm,
We've got AI right here.
right,
We can own this stuff, right?
for sure.
So here's the diagnostic question I want you to ask uh, as we close up today. If your service relationships ended tomorrow, this is
Mm,
gonna be a scary one to ask. I'll be
right.
honest.
Yeah, just the first sentence, I'm like, "Oh."
Right. Would your organization be more capable than when you started, or would you be lost without
Mm,
ongoing support? And answer honestly, please. Like, your honest answer reveals whether you're creating value through that partnership or where you're maintaining vendor dependency.
for sure, for sure. And I wanna make sure that, the people watching this that are in managed services, like, we're not saying that there's no, ongoing retainer, ongoing upsell, cross-sell. It's just more valuable. Like, it's just you're taking the the maintenance of the system you built is table stakes. Like, everyone should be able to do that. And then you're able to pitch more creative things for your retainer. You can say, like, I have a client that recently we did a big pitch for um, some really cool like marketing ideas and like fan engagement and things like that we wouldn't be able to get to if they were still knocking on our door every time they need to send an
Mm,
email. Like, that's
yeah.
just not, that wouldn't be something that we are able to talk about. So by no means are we saying that you should be able to end the relationship as soon as the project is over and that's it. They're out in the wild on their own. Um, just you're adding more value. You're increasing the the level of strategic partnership that you're able to offer. Um, and honestly, like, it's
Yeah.
more fun. Like, the stuff that you get to do at that point is way more fun than
Yeah.
maintaining something that you've been working on for 3 to 6 months, you know?
And that phrase that you just used there, strategic partnership, right? Like, if you're having trouble thinking outside of this box of managed services, because it's been like 20 years, right? Like that this has been thing. Like you look at, there's been a ton of, it's probably still there. we're trying to hang on to it a little bit as AI comes in, but everything is through this lens of like, okay, this is how this type of business works,
Right.
right? Change the word services to partnership.
There you go.
Create managed partnership contracts, retainers, and instantly you start to understand partners want each other to grow. They want each other to be successful,
Right.
right? It totally changes the paradigm, and that helps you get your clients in the right state of mind, right? Because they're in it too. This is the tough part. Everybody's been living in this world where this is the way it's always been. And I'm surprised we made it through this whole thing without me saying like industrial age mindset.
Right.
We got to move you out of the industrial age into the age of AI.
Right.
That's the whole goal of value first.
Mhm.
And on Monday, we're going to explore the ERP trap, with Bill Barless. And
Good one.
obviously, maybe I could have called it the SaaS trap, but like I said, ERP is that thing that nobody ever wants to even suggest we need a new one or like don't ask me about any of my experiences. It's just like deep, right?
Right.
Uh, and it's the physical form. It's probably the physical form, digital. I don't know. It's the tangible form of managed services trap, right?
Right.
Because it's business critical every single time,
Mhm.
and it's painful. And even when everybody hates the system, including the people that own it and are in charge of making decisions about whether we should move or not,
Mhm.
they don't even want to think about uh, a better way, right? So we're going to look at how enterprise systems can enable, natural workflow rather than enforcing. This is the one place in the business so many artificial processes because this is the way the system works.
Mhm.
So we got to create codexes and like all this
Right.
special, like, oh, don't even get me started.
Right. Right.
Uh, but today, start where the managed services trap exists in your organization by mapping it out. Begin those conversations, right? And start up front. This is not about replacement or any of that. It's like we're trying to help everybody grow and do better.
Mhm.
As always, share your experiences in the comments. Where have you seen this pattern? What steps have you taken to break free? Your insights can help a lot of others, recognize and address this trap, in their own contexts. Erin, thank you so much today. This was a
Yeah.
great conversation.
This was fantastic, and I feel like I talked way too much to keep us this long, but I appreciate you having me so much, and getting to talk about this was super fun, and hopefully it's impactful for our audience here.
Well, I think it will be because it's much more than a 10-day series, folks. Got some exciting things coming up. And this will certainly not be the last time you hear Value First.
For sure.
So thank you for listening or watching. Thank you, Erin, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.